All right, recording. Go for it.
Okay. Can y'all see my screen or?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
It's cool desktop you got.
What's that?
It's a cool desktop image you have.
Oh, thanks. It's the goddess Artemis. I thought it was a cool picture of her. So let's see. So as I mentioned on the thread, like the home page is where we added the component for the hidden field, and I think Amber had a really good idea to use a class component, because I think I was trying to use like a functional component and it just was not doing what it was supposed to be doing at all. So this is how she was able to set that up. She used the render function. Can y'all see the code or?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, she used the render function to get the views to toggle between the button and the view. And then let me, I think I have it running already. And I was trying to figure out what was going on with the local storage. I still do not have an answer yet, but this is why this is pulled up here. So this was the hidden field feature. So you click the button, and once you on-click, the field shows up, and then you add your token, and it pulls your list up. And then, Andrew, if you don't mind, I'm just going to use this token that you posted in the thread,
Sure.
so that we can just.
It's a lot of grapes, I think. And grapes on the plane, so I think that's why it was on my mind.
I hear that. Let's see. Okay, here it is.
Jumpy hack meter.
Yep, that's not that. And grapes.
Just one grapes. Okay.
So far that function is working, but it is the local storage that we're still working on, and we're thinking it's somewhere between the homepage.js and list.js where the breakdown kind of happened. So we're gonna be working on fixing that.
Okay, yeah, we'll see if we can track it down. Yeah.
Just before we talk about the Git bisect, I am realizing that I think the issue was that instead of looking at actual local storage, I didn't have my because I thought I'd fixed it and I hadn't, but I don't think I had my console logs correct. So I thought I was console logging what was stored in local storage, and I was not. So I don't think, I'm thinking now, and I might need to look back at the code later on the call, but I'm thinking I didn't actually fix what I thought I fixed. I was just like console logging the input as opposed to console logging the storage, as opposed to using like the dev tools to look into it. Okay. So yeah, looking back, I'm like, that might have been my issue. But there's always like useful Git things to learn. But I wanted to let you know before you went too far.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Mike and Akina, wanna show us your eyes?
Yeah, I can share my screen. One sec. Okay. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep.
All right, so we were tasked 2 weeks ago to, as a user, I want to be alerted when I'm entering an item that is the same as something already on my list, so I can avoid duplicates. I guess I can just do the demo. So when you add an item, crap, what don't I have in my list? So I don't have, so, okay. So if we add in pairs, as you can see, pairs is there. And if you add it again, let's add in a capitalization. It will throw an error that pairs is already on the list. so that the user knows that item is already on the list. We went through many variations, but it came down to Nakima's idea of using context. And I think that solved all our problems, because last week we were struggling with the fact that we were setting the errors, but what was happening is we were grabbing from the whole entire database instead of like the user's database or token through the database. So Nakima and I figured that out, and it was great. It's like, you know, how Nakima did most of the restructuring, which I really appreciated, because like I felt a little bit overwhelmed of like how this is going to like be broken down with like my previous code before we use context, and a lot from it. Basically what she did was added the normalized function in its own component. She created this list context that basically does bulk of the work, grabbing the token and then finding that unique item and checking if, you know, there's a duplicate. So the normalize function is added here, and then we are able to use the grab from the storage and use it to anywhere else. So it's like in the highest parent in this application. The item error is pretty simple. It just returns an error. And I kind of like had this idea of using like a Ruby error, kind of that kind of UX, user interface experience. And then as you go to add item, nothing really changed here except for, again, grabbing from the list context and sending the error state. And that, I mean, Nakima, you can chime in. You did lots of the restructuring, and kind of after Steve's comments, she re-edited some of the stuff that Steve wanted to.
Yeah, I actually had to run to get the oven. So I think a lot changed since since we started this story, because I ended up implementing the use context hook, and I have all the context stuff in that file list, context.js. So a lot of the things that we were pulling together to show the list and to like work with the list, it's all like in this file now. So the token, it gets set in that first line. We're keeping the item name in state, the shopping list in state. I moved, okay, yeah, fetch list, that's what it says, like it gets the user's list by token. And then since we were supposed to check for duplicates, like we created a function to do that. And then nothing gets added until we're sure that it's not a duplicate. And I didn't know how to use the, what's it called? React Firestore. So I just called it from like Firebase. So that part changed also, because it was using like the higher order component when it was in add item?
Yeah.
So now it's not that way anymore. But yeah, it was mostly just like pulling things that were in the other components, oh my gosh, the list component and the add item. Like it's just pulling those things and like putting them in one spot that the rest of the app gets to access.
Right. It was really helpful. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot of good stuff in there, like kind of pulling these things out into discrete functions that have like a single responsibility. I like that a lot, because that sets you up to then be able to test things. What you probably, through the course of testing, what you probably find is that some of the, like if you just tweak those functions a little bit so that you kind of give the function everything it needs and it gives you an answer. Like it looks like you're passing in a name, but it needs to know something else, and like they're not kind of pure functions, so they're a little harder to test. But it's a really good first step to kind of start. They're not just like a good discipline too, to be pulling those things out. And this function does this one thing. That's great. What were you gonna say, Mike?
Basically what you just said.
Oh, okay.
It was great seeing Nikimo told me when she broke these into pieces, it made more sense why she did it, and it will help me as I code, breaking it more into okay, this function is supposed to do this exact thing, and being able to do that. So it was really great seeing Nikimo work that way.
Yeah, and I agree with Steve that file is probably a little overloaded, but it's also it's a nice kind of organic way to build something up. Is like you get it all working kind of in one file, and then you can say oh, this piece I can move over here later. So it's I don't really have a problem with how you went about it at all. It's with experience you might be able to anticipate that a little bit better, but you still might do the same thing. If I'm going to build it all out in this one file where I can see everything, get it working, and then start to kind of factor it out.
And I did end up taking most of Steve's suggestions. He suggested that we not have the UI stuff happening in the list context. So I did take that out, and list context handles its own error now.
Yeah, that's great. It's a big improvement. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, a little stretch goal would be to figure out how to use that higher order function and kind of use that to access the database directly. But and maybe you could use add item or wherever it is where we're already using it as a pattern. But I totally understand getting it done, kind of just doing it the way you know. Cool. All right, Monica and Amber, you want to? Oh, I guess you showed us. Sorry, you showed us the button. So cool. So I guess I'm gonna try to use get bisect for the second time in my life here. See how this goes. I was kind of looking it up. The idea with get bisect is, actually, Amber, now that you said that you think you may not have actually fixed it, this may not go as smoothly. Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. I can't hear you because you're muted.
Let's see if I can message her.
Yeah, I think she. There you go.
But yeah, I was thinking, because as I was looking through what I had done, what I had thought was the solution, after I looked at it again, I'm like, oh, I think what I thought was my solution technically caused a new problem. Because I mean, the problem with not storing the local storage, I had fixed that last week. And I think what I thought I was doing, which is setting a conditional for when you return nothing from the database, you just set token as an empty string. I think what my code actually did is just make it an empty string always again.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think what I thought was my problem was actually my problem in hindsight.
Okay. Well, we can give it a shot and see if we help us at all. The idea with get bisect is you have your current state of your code and you know it's broken, right? But you know that at some point it was working. So the idea is that like in a really busy repo, that could be 100 commits back that that okay, I know that it was working last Thursday, but there's always people committing to the thing, and it's 100 commits back. And so instead of going commit by commit and trying to find where is it working, get bisect literally takes those 100 commits and starts you in the middle, and you say, did it work or not? And if it worked, then it takes the next that half and it cuts that in half, right? So it's a really quick way to get down to the commit that actually caused the problem. So we'll try it here. I mean, there was a commit in the logs. This one here, fix token change to empty string. So we'll assume that that's our kind of working hash. So just you see, I'm on your branch here. So we'll get bisect. Oh, and before I hit return on that, we'll just show that the problem is happening. So grapes, man, nothing better than grapes. Let me move this toolbar out of the way. Okay, so got grapes, but then I think what's going to happen if I reload that, the token's gone, right? So that's the very latest commit on that branch. So I'm going to git bisect to this SHA that we think is a good one. So let's try this again. All right. So click to generate existing list. Okay, so if I go to the list page, list not found, right? So I add an item, grapes, so many grapes. There's grapes, and now if I reload, okay, so we still have the same problem. So that's kind of halfway through. So git bisect. I didn't get as far as saying like how to say whether it's good or not. Git bisect bad, I guess. Oops. Oh, whoops. All right. I don't know what I'm doing, obviously. I don't actually know where I'm at. Made homepage class. That's the last. That's today's last commit, right? That one, the made homepage class component. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So, so I think what I need to do now, since I said git bisect start, so git bisect. All right. I should have completed my research before I got on the call and recorded myself trying to do this. Okay, git bisect reset. We're gonna start over. All right. So how it works? Let's see. Git bisect start. Oh, I see. So you say git bisect start. Then you say git bisect bad, meaning that the current version is bad. Git bisect good, and then I guess you can say a SHA. So say the SHA. So all right, git bisect start. Git bisect bad. Git bisect good, and the SHA. So it should. So 5 revisions left to test after this. Add to back package JSON. So now we'll go back to the app. Interesting. Okay, token not found. All right. So this is one of those commits that was where it wasn't rendering right. It's gonna make it a little harder. Let's say bisect bad. What we got? Okay. Similar error. You do see kind of what it's doing though, like it's saying roughly 2 steps left, roughly 1 step left. Like it's taking each, like the remaining diffs and just like kind of putting you in the middle of those, and then you get like, you kind of narrow it down based on, you know, whether it's working at that point or not. So
the idea is like every step along the way for like every commit, you have to like manually go in and test and report whether it's good or bad, and then it does its like determination. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what it's doing is really just simple. You know, there's like a list of commits, and it's just saying like, here's the one in the middle. Was that good or bad? If it's bad, like keep going back in the history from that point, right? Okay. So here we have a working one. I don't know which. So trying to get form to work without use effect. So.
But like the reason it's challenging with this one is because the previous commits were like broken anyway, so it's harder to test and determine.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's see if this does work. Okay, that's a leaving the token too. So I think git bisect is not going to work for this case, but because we've kind of gone through all the steps already. What's that?
Still very cool to see.
Yeah, it's a really cool technique, especially like I said on a busy repo. So git bisect reset. So we're back at the head. So let's see. Another thing we could try is, so we think it's the list.js. Is that right? You're muted again.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, we think it may be the set item in list.js.
Yeah, because what I thought it was doing is that that Firestore that called the database, I thought I had wanted it to do that whenever it got nothing from that call, it would reset the local storage to an empty string. But I think maybe the way that I use the logic, it might just do that after every call.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it does it on the refresh and resets it to an empty string.
Okay. So I wonder actually even if, so the other thing I was going to try was, doing a diff on a particular file between two revisions or something, but it sounds like we haven't actually had a working revision, fully working revision, right? Like, so maybe what the thing to do is let's just kind of look at the code together and see if we can figure out what the problem is. Oh, Nikima, you didn't demo your fix for the little gap down at the bottom left, but thank you for doing that.
Good job.
That made me feel good. So let's look at these two files. So if you maybe guide me and kind of walk me into where, whoops, stop. All right, there we go. Zoom toolbar. Where are we setting that that token back to?
It's in list.js, and it should be in the render of the Firestore thing. Yeah. So I had thought that would set the that would just set the token to an empty string and put out the error message. But I haven't got a chance to look at it a lot because unfortunately I thought it was fixed. But upon inspection, I think that's just resetting it for every call, and maybe I'm just doing something wrong.
Since this is gonna reset it every time this component mounts. Is that right, Andrew?
I think so, because I think data.length is going to be 0 until Firebase comes back with here's the data. It's going to say 0 until you get to that. So that might be what the problem is. That's kind of a guess. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah. So let's see. So data.length, what you're trying to do here is see if no data comes back associated with the token. Oh, well, that also in the case that you have a list, but you haven't, I guess that's not how it works. The only way you have a list in this case is if you've added an item to it, right? So it should have a length of 1 at a minimum if you have a list. Is that true?
I mean, that was my thought.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's true. Yeah.
I just wonder if it's when it's in this loading state. We could, let's say let's say that maybe. If it's not loading, if it's done loading and data is still a 0 length, then we'll set it back to 0. And if it's already, this is if they put in an incorrect token. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So that's why we're setting it back to nothing. Okay. So let's just see if that change does it, because then at least we're not, if this data length is 0 until something loads, then we're not getting tripped up by that case at least. So I just added this, if it's not loading and data length equals 0, then we'll show your error message. So let's just see if that works. It's kind of a stab in the dark, to be honest, but okay. All right, so I reloaded, add an item. You never guess what it's going to be. Okay, there's some grapes. I reloaded, and there's still grapes. So it must have been something about in that loading state. It was going into that conditional. It was making its way into that conditional.
That makes sense. That wasn't the way I was thinking about it, but that makes sense.
So
it was saying that it was reading data as 0 before data existed. That's why it was wiping it out.
Yeah, I guess even when it's in the loading state, it still is returning something in that data variable. So I don't know if that's the best fix for it in the world, but it does work. So I can, let's see, I'm on your branch. I'll just commit it to your branch if that's all right.
Oh yeah.
I have the shortcut set up for that. Get stuff.
I would have never thought that.
Ah. Oh, pre-commit hooks. Right. Good job. Let's see. Yeah, earlier, Monica, I think you were saying you had this problem, right? So so you couldn't push because you didn't have the latest refs or whatever. So I'm gonna check out master. Pull master. There's been changes on master. I'm gonna master branch name get AJ. Okay. And now let me just make sure it's still working before I'm gonna merge master into your branch, but I'm just gonna make sure it still works first.
So in case anybody feels a little bit uncomfortable still with Git, he went to master and was like, I need all the latest stuff that's on master. And because Nikima and Mike merged, there's new stuff up there, pulled it down, and then is taking that and merging it in with your branch. So it has all of the latest code as well.
So it still works, like we don't have the token issue, and I was able to add the same item again because I haven't merged master in yet. So now we'll get merge master. So I'm, whoa, all right. I have some conflicts. Oh, this is gonna be fun. Okay, so add item list and new list, right? Oops, wrong one. Okay, so let's do this together. So let's see, what do we want here? Map item. I think we want what's coming in from master, correct?
Yes, because that's pulling everything from context now.
Right.
The new incoming stuff.
Okay. Oh, there's another one up here. So do we need your error message thing though? So we need the error message one. Homepage button, is that still active?
It looks like it's being used because it's not yelling at us for not using it.
All right. Page button.
Oh, now.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. And list context. Okay, so I think that's probably the right state for that file. You notice how I didn't just like accept or reject, or like I didn't accept one or the other. I just literally edited the file until I had the state that I wanted, because like if I had accepted one or the other, I wouldn't have gotten both, like all three of these imports.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that? Okay. All right, so that's that one. Let's see, new list.
I think that needs to be deleted.
The whole file?
Yeah, because
okay.
I worked on that story and we were trying to, what was that? I think it was when we were trying to associate the token with a list. And that was just like a test that got left over.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay. Done. This one's okay. It was add item, I guess, was the other one. Okay, there we go. There's some conflicts. All right. Maybe help me out here.
Use effect. I don't think you need any of that of the old stuff. 'Cause I think that's essentially how it all looks, pulling from context the same exact information.
Yeah, so I get rid of all that.
I'm
That
pretty
head.
sure you can.
Let's try it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's more. Let's see. And the set error, I think now is being done a different way too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. 34 minutes. All right. Oh, I probably should have made sure it was working before I pushed it. All right, so now that we've merged master, what I would expect to happen. Yeah, see, you got an error, so I can't add that, even if there's like 2 spaces and yep, see, grapes.
Nice.
It's already on the list. But what if we just want a single grape? I'll have to buy that very often, so I'm gonna mark soon. Now we have grapes, and grapes. And now if I reload, they're still there. All right, cool.
That's great.
We're good.
Yeah.
So let's, Amber, why don't you go ahead and merge that? I don't know if anybody needs to approve it or should be able to just merge it. And then, cool. That means we're done with those issues. It's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. Woo-woo.
Good job, team.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's a long slog, I know. But you know, I mean, I so appreciate the effort and like the sticking with it, and that's like, it's just such a,
Great.
it happens in the real world all the time where it's like, oh my god, like, you know, why is this not working? You hit your head against the wall for a week, and then, you know, half the time it's like you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, I just need to change that from like a semicolon to a comma, and then it's like, you know, and then it works or something. So.
As you go into your next week, like, I think that I want to like put a lot of emphasis on like setting up your story before actually like jumping into coding it. So what I would probably suggest is use your wikis or whatever kind of collaboration document you're using, whether it's a draft PR or whatever, to really like get an idea of exactly what you're going to do. Kind of like how I think Lars was walking us through like how he would set up the issue. And then once you have that, drop it in the channel and like ping one of the mentors to be like, do you have any feedback on this? Any thoughts on if this is good or not? I think like the louder that you can be and the more, you know, buy-in we can get from other people, the like quicker and harder we can move, rather than like spinning your wheels and being like, well, this was like the totally wrong direction or something. So since we're all like really crunched for time, like let's just be really loud and we'll like work together and do the thing.
Yeah. Do y'all have 10 more minutes? Could we go a little bit longer? And then, so it looks like the pairs for this coming week. Is that right? Everybody okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, I'm cool. I'd have time for sure.
All right. So it looks like it's Mike and Monica and Nikema and Amber next week. Stacie, do you have another 10 minutes?
Yep.
Cool. So why don't we right now decide which pair is doing which story, and we'll just take 10 minutes. Like each of us, like each pair will, like I'll pair off with one pair, and Stacie can pair off with another pair in like a breakout room.
Cool.
And we'll just talk through the thing, just like kind of talk through approach really quick, and just make sure, at the very least, like clarify any like what the requirements are and all that kind of stuff. Just make sure we're kind of well set up to get a fast start this coming week. Is that cool?
Sounds good.
That's a great idea.
Nice. So I'll let you all fight over which stories you're going to do.
Let me see.
Let's see what they are.
Choose.
I'm fine with either or. So, Monica, if you have a preference, let me know.
I'm just pulling it up. Sorry.
I'm gonna take a look. I probably won't. I'll probably fine with either one too. Let me just double check.
the more complex one is going to be number 9. 8's going to be a little simpler. It's more like just UI. Number 9 is going to be tracking a little bit of like comparing dates and stuff to see whether the thing was purchased in the last 24 hours.
I want to do 9 because it's hard.
All right, nice. I like it. I like the attitude.
Yeah.
Mike's like, really?
I'm good. I'm good.
As much as I can with React, so I'd rather do something that's kind of code heavy or like function heavy than doing something that's more UI based, if that makes sense. Because I don't really have that eye for like designing stuff and like making stuff look pretty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
So why don't I'll jump in with Mike and Monica, is that all right? And then you jump in with Amber and Nikema. Let me see if I can figure out how to
Yeah, I was thinking
breakout rooms.
I've never done that myself.
Actually, Stacie, why don't you spin up a new Zoom and the 3 of you go over to another one.
I'll send it.
Rather than me wasting time on that. So Amber and Nikema, you can drop off, and Stacie will post a new link. But thank you for all your hard work, and we'll talk to you on Slack. All right, cool. Okay, so are y'all looking at the issue?
Yes.
You got it pulled up? Cool.
Sorry, Mike, don't kill me. I was just like, yeah, let's do 9.
No, I'm totally fine. I really meant it when I said let's. I'm fine either way. I mean, this is a learning experience. So whatever one we choose is, the challenge I would love to face. So I'm glad you chose number 9.
Yeah, this is a fun one actually. So let's see. Actually, I could show you. I'm kind of meaning to do this. Could show you actually. Let me share my screen again. So I don't know if y'all have looked at the app that I built originally, the one that this is based on. It's yeah, there it is. App that I need to buy XYZ. So come on. There we go. When I inspect, because the target for the app is a phone, right? So I always, whenever I inspect, I always have it in phone mode or whatever, and then you get like touch events and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so this is kind of the live one. I had like barcode scanning and stuff, but we'll just do grapes.
That's really cool.
And so you see how it has a little check mark here. Like if it had, because I just bought it. So I have one purchase today that has an estimated next purchase of 7 days from now. But because it's within 24 hours of being purchased, I have a little check mark. If it was more than 24 hours, that check mark wouldn't be there. So that's kind of the general idea. It's so I guess maybe talk to me about how, like, what are your first kind of thoughts about how you would go about kind of working with that, or like kind of solving this one.
You mean like solving story 9 as far as like what you have there, kind of getting that to match up?
Yeah, doing something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. An item already on my shopping list was purchased.
I mean, one consideration right off the bat is that you're going to have things in your list that are older than 24 hours. Like it's been more than 24 hours since you purchased them, right? But I don't. And when you add an item, that marks it as the first purchase. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes. Whatever, I guess the most recent item that you buy, I guess, is at the top of that list on your app.
Yeah, on mine it is. But it's not the most recent purchase. It's the ones that the app thinks are going to be purchased like most soon or whatever,
Okay.
Let's see what my token was here. Artist Popple Bet. God, tokens are so weird.
They are like, where do they get these random words from?
Yeah, it's just a random word list. So. Oh, okay. So I guess we don't actually have, we're not storing the date that something was purchased. So we're not going to be able to compare that like and see if it was in the last 24 hours. So I think that looks like a new data point, right?
So
Actually, I was going to say maybe one of you could set up the branch really quick, and another person could set up the wiki. And
Okay.
by setting up the wiki, we have a place to take some notes while we talk it through.
Yeah, I was taking notes actually from the story, but I can actually, yeah, let's create that wiki page too. And I'll create the branch right now.
No, you sure?
Unless you want, yeah, Monica could do that while you're doing the wiki.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to minimize my screen. Okay, there we go. Exit full screen.
Something really funny happened at the retreat last week. So you see Stacie's avatar here, you know? She had like this headshot done in the sweater and the hat. And she had the sweater and the hat with her. And there's this really funny guy at work. He actually used to hold the world record for stacking waffles. It's like a ridiculous world record. Yeah, I know. But he's like, and he's just like, this super like loose, open guy. And he convinced Stacie to let him put on the sweater and the hat and have her take his picture, like in the same pose, you know, with like the hand up and everything. And so he did that and he posted it on our company Slack. And then like everybody started doing it. So like by the end there were like 50, literally 50 people, over 50 people who had like the sweater and the hat and the pose and everything. And we're like, it's all posting, like we're all changing our Slack avatars to it and stuff.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
That's awesome.
Stacie was like out of her mind, happy about it.
That's way cool.
That is hilarious.
It was so funny. It made Slack like really useless though, because you couldn't scan and see who was saying what. You're like, Stacie's everywhere. Like, what's she doing in this channel? Like,
let me see. Dumb question. So did Amber already like push all of the changes to master? Like, did she like merge our branch to master already?
actually, I don't know. Yeah.
Because I want to like.
Oh, because you want to base your branch off of the. Yeah, it looks like it's all up to date. Yep.
Okay.
All right, wiki page is created.
Cool.
To production branch. Sorry. Okay, there we go. I always forget how to do this. So I know when you do the get checkout -b, like that creates the new branch, but does it automatically put you, does it pull it from master? Because I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it'll base it on whatever branch you were on at the time. So, you know, if you were on master and then you created it, it would base it on master.
Okay, I was not. So I wasn't sure how to get back to master. I'm going to close my Visual Studio Code out. So I can go back.
So get checkout master, and then you can get branch -d and the branch you just created, and that should get rid of it.
Okay. Oh, what is this? Okay. My computer moves so slow. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, that's all right.
Um, maybe set 9. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm formatting this correctly before I, yeah. That's fine. Okay, I have the branch up.
Cool, awesome. So yeah, looking in the database, maybe Mike, you probably already wrote this down. Looking in the database, it looks like we're not currently storing the date that an item is last purchased. So I think there's another story later where we're actually kind of doing subsequent purchases. So in this case, what we'll do is just we're going to need. It looks like we're going to need to modify how when we're adding an item, so that we save the current date when we do that, and that'll give us the information we need to then know whether it's currently, like at the time the user is viewing, whether it's 24 hours, more than 24 hours later. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So user is able to tap a checkbox or similar UI element to mark an item in the list as purchased. So we don't currently have any kind of buttons or checkboxes associated with individual items in the list. So that's something we're going to need to add. And
I'm
then
jotting down notes too, just so I can remember what to work on.
Yeah, great. And so for the 24 hours after purchase thing, like when you think about sort of, so we're going to have this list, we're going to have these, the data there. How are you kind of envisioning, or can you kind of envision, like, based on what you know about the app, like how you would either render this, like, sort of, checked or not kind of, state for each item.
Checked for 24 hours. I feel like and as I said, I know very little about React. But I feel like there should be like a function that kind of has that conditional statement, like if this item is, and I don't know how to like put it into syntax, but pretty much it's a conditional saying that if it's been checked for that amount of time, to let's see. Is there a way to make it like maybe ignore an item or something like that, or like pull it from wherever it's being stored so it's not there anymore?
Yeah, I mean, so you could, one approach that you could use would be to filter on things like, pull maybe 2 separate lists, one that's within a certain like time range and one that's, past that time range. And then the 2 lists could have the different states. But the problem with, like, then you're making an extra database call. It'll be slower for the user, like, because of the network traffic. So you're gonna get the whole list back from the list context. It'll have all of this data in it. so kind of the Reacty way to do this is sort of at render time. Like, you know, like as you're rendering each item, you can do some kind of check for, you know, that time period. You know, is it within 24 hours? And, you know, sort of, yes, put a check mark next to it, right?
Didn't JavaScript come up with like a new method called like date now? I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is that something we can use?
Date.now.
Yeah,
maybe
date.
Dates are tricky to work with, and so you could try that. I mean, wherever you can, I would suggest trying to use native methods and stuff. But
yeah,
you know, it's a lot of times when you're working with dates and times and stuff, it's a lot more convenient to find a library that does it well. You know, like you can just kind of throw it two date objects and say like, what's the time interval or something. You know, like has a bunch of convenience functions. So either way is fine, but you might save yourself some time by finding a library that does it.
Find a library that does.
This is true in every programming language.
Yeah.
Because dates and times are just they're notoriously hard to work with.
Right.
Like time zones and all kind of stuff. Boy. You know, India is a half hour off from its neighbors, not an hour off. Stuff like that. Some places do daylight savings time, some places don't, you know, all those kind of things. So using a library, like they've figured all that stuff out. You don't have to worry about it.
So basically, when a user adds an item, when we add the item, we set the time, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically when this timer or this library will set the timer for like 24 hours. If it's past 24 hours, the check mark resets. Is that how it works?
Yeah, you would not show a check mark if it's more than 24 hours. But if it's within 24 hours, like basically you want to prevent the user from hitting buy more than once in a 24-hour period. Does that make sense?
Right.
So
Yeah.
they shouldn't be able to repurchase the item in that time. But for now, we don't really have a purchase button yet. So for now, it's maybe just more of a visual indicator in the UI. Like, you know, literally putting a check mark next to the ones that have been purchased recently, like in the last 24 hours.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. You're probably going to have, you're going to add a bunch of items to your list. I guess you have existing, well, none of those have dates on them. So you're going to have to fix the add item thing so that you're tracking the time of purchase. And then go into the database and probably set those dates to further in the past in order to have both states represented.
Mm-hmm. So we had to add a new data point that tracks the time when it's first added, essentially.
Yeah. Now, just because I know what's coming, that's probably what you could use is the last date that it was purchased. Like make that the data point. So even though like when you're adding the item, like it would make sense to have it be like, you know, first purchase or time, you know, date added or something like that. But really, like we're going to keep using that field over and over again whenever the user purchases it.
Okay.
So it's really more like the last time, the most recent time they purchased it. That's what you're trying to get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of random, but this is the part that I was struggling with, like, I should say 2 weeks ago, because we spent 2 weeks on it. Just this part of like breaking everything down, like what needs to be done, just organizing everything. Like, I got really overwhelmed trying to, you know, chunk the tasks up and try to figure out, okay, what do we want it to do? How is it supposed to look? How we go about doing that? What's the logic behind it? So I'm really glad that we get to kind of sit down and do this so I can have a better idea of what this should look like.
Yeah, Stacie and I were talking about this today, like, because we didn't actually have, we were thinking about like, oh, it was like a learning module week, right? But we didn't have one ready because we were at this retreat. And I was like, maybe we should just like sit down and kind of talk through the next, like the coming work that we're going to be doing. And then I was like, maybe we should always do that because it's like, you actually do this in a real job setting, you know, like, you know, the team will sit down and like, they'll talk through the work and like kind of maybe brainstorm for a few minutes, like sort of what the approach might be and stuff like this. We do this all the time, you know? So it's pretty realistic to actually have these conversations too.
Well, that's definitely like a relief to know, because I'm still working on getting my first like entry level job. So like everything that we're doing as far as like making the wikis and having like our weekly meetings and like the retros every 2 weeks, like all that stuff is like new to me. So yeah, this is just really helpful for sure.
Yeah, good, cool. Do you feel like you have enough to go on now, or any questions?
Sorry. Whenever I'm in deep thought, I just become really quiet, and I should be more vocal about it.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah. So, because I'm thinking like the way I break things out is I think of like how a user uses this story. So, you know, they add the item, and then basically, like we said, we have to create a new data point that sets when the item was last purchased. And then, so we're thinking about, so that's going to be like its own component. And do we have to create another component basically figuring out like how long this item has been stored? And then does that mean, how does that look like when how do I say this? How does that look like when it does it by itself? Like, do we have to do anything to trigger that, or how does the computer know to trigger that point where it's been past 4 hours?
Yeah, it's a really good question. In React, the principle is usually that something that's like sort of representing a state in the UI, you do it sort of as late as possible. So you give the component the data that it needs, and when it's rendering, it figures these kinds of things out. So what I would recommend is, there's some place in the code where we're mapping over all the items, and we're, spitting out a list item or whatever for each one of those. Like, it's at that point that you should compare that last purchase date to the current date, and then either show a checkbox or not, a check or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There are probably a lot of ways to make this a lot more complicated than it has to be.
Well, I mean, what I really enjoy about this is that like you give simple tasks, but they take a lot of thought processing to do. So it's different from like when I, build a website for someone. It's really like working with a team and really fleshing it out, because there's so many other things that can go wrong that it's taking my mindset to think differently. It's not just like, okay, push this out. It's more like, well, this will reflect other components that's working with other teams. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I have a grasp on it. Yeah, this is a really great experience.
Cool. Any other questions, Monica? Are you good?
I think I'm okay for right now. I think my thing is, with me being kind of new to all of this, a lot of times like I don't even have the vocabulary or like the thought process I need to even ask the right questions, if that makes sense. So
totally, yeah.
Like, it's all new. Like, I'm learning as I'm like putting my hands in the code, if that makes sense.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sure I have more questions once we get started.
Yeah, for sure. Just set up your first pairing session, and like see how that goes, and when surely questions will come up. So just ping us in the Slack, and we'll get answers to you as soon as we can.
Yeah. Monica, do you want to meet right after this? I'll just send you my Zoom, and we can just like kind of hash it out, unless you're busy right now.
Yeah, no, I am not. I have nothing going on. Like, I finished everything early today, so I was actually responsible and disciplined for once. So we have time to sit down with you. So we're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll send you a link so we can leave Andrew alone for a bit.
Can watch the end of the Niners game. I think they're kind of dominating. Anyway, good job. I'll quit this meeting, and you guys can start up your own. But thanks,
thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew.
For sure.
All right.